Hey, I'm Caucus, and welcome to Let It Rip. We're coming to you from the CUNY TV studios in the shadow of the Empire State Building in New York City. Now, recently, despite ongoing tensions, the New York City Council and Mayor Eric Adams celebrated the passage of a $112.4 billion budget. That amount makes New York City's budget significantly bigger than the budgets of many states and countries. Now, while many were thankful that the budget restored some of the cuts that Mayor Adams announced last year, it still remains unclear how much of this budget will be able to address some of the major challenges facing New York City. To help us unpack and understand the budget, we have an exclusive one-on-one interview with New York City Mayor Eric Adams. I'm Caucus, and this is Let It Rip. Mayor, thank you for joining us. Glad to have you.
Great to be here. One Queens young man to the next.
There you go. So between the preliminary budget and the final budget, one of the things that emerged was that some of the spending cuts that you had articulated earlier in the year, those were off the table. What changed?
It's so important to understand what happened and why bond raters increased our bond ratings, because they saw how we manage not only the COVID crisis, but also a multi-billion-dollar migrant and asylum seeker crisis. So when I came into office January 1st, 2022, I went to every agency and I said, you have to do what everyday taxpayers are doing. You must find better ways, efficiency, to balance the money that's coming in and the money that's going out. Then we put in place what was called PEGs, where each agency had to find savings. When we got down to the middle, out of nowhere, we had 200,000 migrants and asylum seekers that came to our city with a projected $12 billion budget to it. We spent $5 billion so far. That money must come from somewhere. So when we did the November plan, we had everyone did a series of PEGs. The last PEG in April, we said we came up with enough savings. We don't have to do another PEG, which would have been devastating. And finally, we sat down with the City Council, Adrian Adams, and we looked at this $7.1-ish billion that we had in savings and PEGs, and we said, what are the ones we can reinstate? Right. Libraries, pre-K, 3K, summarizing, cultural institutions. So as in any homeowner would do, you first say, everybody does a percentage. Now let's go back and see what we can reinstate it. It was a smart way. We came into this year, brother, with a $7 billion gap in our budget. Okay. We had plans. The former mayor put in plans, permanent programs, summarizes 3K, and other programs that was COVID dollars. It all sunsetted this year. So
and I want to pick up on that. So, and one of the things that you've articulated was that, look, folks had to tighten their belts, particularly the city agencies. When you realized that the financial outlook wasn't as terrible as it looked, you said, look, we're not going to make some of the final cuts. But one of the things that emerged from at least the stated meeting when the council members voted on the budget was that a lot of folks felt it was more restorative as opposed to strengthening and building on some of the things that you've done in the past. What would you say to that?
Well, look at the experts. It's not Eric Adams that's saying I manage this fiscal crisis through COVID and 200,000 migrants and asylum seekers. This is financial experts. The major bond raters looked at how our team managed this with Jock Jihad and all of our team members, and they said, these guys navigated us out of this storm in a real way. Some experts were saying, you should cut more. Right. They were saying, you should cut deeper. And we said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to cut just to recut. Now, out of the $7 billion, we put back only $345-something million out of those programs that the council and the mayor's office said, listen, these are those programs that we don't want to cut.
Okay. So moving forward, right, understanding that you've just passed a $112.4 billion budget.
A lot of money.
Right.
Now think about something for a moment, because it was very important what you just said. Not all of that is you're able to move around. You only have about $30 billion you can play with. The rest of it is locked in.
Yeah, it's earmarked for.
Exactly, it's marked for something.
Right.
So out of that $30 billion that we could play with, brother, we got to take $5 billion off the top.
Okay.
From the migrants and asylum seekers.
Right. So, but when you think about that and think about what people are going through in the city, you've termed yourself a blue-collar mayor, right?
Yes.
Identifying with blue-collar workers. But between 2020 and I think 2022, you had almost 500,000 Black and Hispanic folks leaving the city because it was too expensive. One of the, one of those is affordable housing, where most folks are spending over 30% of their income on rents. Then you have childcare, and then of course you have cost of inflation.
Right.
Is there anything in this budget that will make people say, we want to stay in New York City because we think that the budget is actually going to speak and address our needs?
I love that. I love that. And look at the years you talked about it.
Right.
2020,
right.
2021. You know what? I wasn't mayor.
Right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
I wasn't mayor.
Right.
Mayor 2022. So what did I do? Immediately went to Albany and said, we're charging low-income New Yorkers $55 a week for child care. I need help. They gave me the help I needed. We dropped it down less than $5 a week. We have not had an increase in earned income tax credit in over 20 years. We went to Albany, they dropped the earned income tax credit down.
But when it comes to 3K, it's not a universal program as yet. You restored some of the chairs, the seats that were there, but it's not a universal program, which is what many of the council members were hoping for. So I'm wondering what you're thinking in terms of at least making or thinking about making that program universal, because a lot of folks are spending almost $30,000 on child care per year.
And I want to do that, but first I want to answer your first part of the question to tell you what we have done.
Yeah.
We paid college tuition to foster care children who were 600 to 700 aging out every year, and we know what was happening to them. We're paying their tuition, giving them a stipend, and when they graduate, we're also taking care of them and giving them life coaches until they're 21. We put money back in the pockets of NYCHA residents by giving them free high-speed broadband and cable access for telemedicine, children remote learning. We place more people and we finance more people, finance more affordable housing in 1 year in the history of the city. Move more people out of homeless shelter into permanent housing in 1 year in the history of the city. More people participated in the FEPS vouchers program in 1 year in the history of the city. And when you zero in on what you talked about with child care for a moment, when I inherited a mess, we were paying for empty seats. Everyone was promoting that we have 3K pre-K. Thousands of seats were empty. Taxpayers' dollars were paying for that. What we said, let's realign this and make sure we put children in seat and come up with the proper cost, and not just boasting about we have 3K and pre-K. Every child that wanted a seat will have access to a seat.
So is that a guarantee that anybody that needs childcare in New York City will be able to access low cost or even free childcare?
Well, you got to explain that for me, because if I'm making $300,000 a year, you may want child care, but you need to pay for it. You know, child care should go to those low-income New Yorkers who cannot afford it, and not just share it. We dropped from $55 a week to less than $5 a week. Come on, man, you gotta say, come on, are we kidding?
No, I give credit where it's due.
Right.
But if we're and one of the things that you talked about was NYCHA.
Yes.
One of the things that emerged, at least in terms of the 20-year plan, is that it's approximately $80 billion in terms of what they need.
Right.
Do you think that there's enough in this budget to be able to address some of the repairs that NYCHA residents really need?
No, no. you just said
it's $80 billion. Right.
$80 billion.
So I'm wondering how you're going to deal with that.
I got 111. So microphones will take $80 billion out of 111.
You got a lot going on, so I know that's not going to happen.
Right.
But I'm curious to hear what you're thinking.
Here's what we've done that everyone tried and failed. NYCHA Land Trust.
Okay.
Everyone tried it and failed it. We also included NYCHA in our housing plan. That never has been done before. They've ignored NYCHA. And Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer said, we're not doing that. We're going to focus on NYCHA residents. And so with the NYCHA Land Trust, and they've been voting on what method of improving NYCHA. Because everybody's running around here talking about we need to do something about NYCHA and we need to do something about NYCHA. But what are you doing? Those bugles are not it's not the cavalry, it's taps, brother. I've been zero focused on NYCHA. We get this NYCHA Land Trust, we're going to free up billions of dollars. Okay. Federal government has abandoned NYCHA. Right. $80 billion.
Right. Gotcha. All right. So let's pivot a little bit.
Yes.
You had a pretty good celebratory event with the city council.
Yes.
Came in with the plane, and you said, "Yo, we landed the plane on time."
Adams and Adams United.
There you go. So, One of the things that folks have been talking about is the tensions that have existed between you and the city council. Talk a little bit about that, that even despite those tensions, you still were able to both land the plane.
I mean, well, I got tensions with myself, man. There are days I wake up and I say, you know, Eric, why did you do that?
Right.
I mean, what is wrong? I don't know why people have this level of insecurities that if you debate, I don't know if you're married or not, you're not going to tell me, marry your boo or whatever. Right. You know, you're not going to tell me you're in a relationship with someone and there's a moment of tension. Right. But the question is, do you love each other? Do you love the city? Can you do what's right for the city? So people want to focus on, okay, here are the 4 things that you guys disagree on, and not the 96 things that we agreed on. Adrian and I, 2 kids from Queens, 2 kids that grew up with blue-collar parents, show the globe that a complex city like New York, 8.3 million people, 35 million opinions, we were able to navigate the city out of COVID, navigate the city at an economic downturn, navigate the city out of 200,000 migrants and asylum seekers. People are playing us, brother. They want to let you believe the first African-American women, the second African-American men, all we can do is argue with each other. Everyone highlights where we disagree those 4 times. I don't see people writing the stories about, look what these 2 middle-class civil servant children were able to accomplish. Adrian should be proud, and I'm proud, and we share that every day.
You forgot to mention you're both from Queens.
Queens.
But
in the same community.
There you go.
Went to the same high school.
Right, right. So if I could just shift it a little bit,
yes.
Particularly with regard to the public safety question.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that there was a little bit of tension or significant tension between you and the city council was the How Many Stops Act.
Yes.
And you were very clear that you didn't need the bill and you went ahead and vetoed it.
Right.
And the council came back and overrode the veto and
yes.
you know, you have it now. So what were some of the challenges behind that tension between you two that eventually the city council as a body decided to override the veto?
Listen, the architects of our democracy needs that healthy, you know, we have the executive, we have the legislative, and we have the judicial. That is an unbelievable concept because no one should have absolute power. In those areas that we disagree, there's a balancing act. Like right now, there's a balancing act going on now with the Charter Review Commission. The council doesn't like the Charter Review Commission the way it's rolled out, but the architects of our Constitution said this is what we put in place to balance power and really foster communication and how do you negotiate. So what happened with the How Many Stop Acts, there was 2 parts of it. One was the How Many Stop Acts, and the second was the in solitary confinement. They hijacked the sound bites. When you look at the How Many Stop Acts, every time a police officer stopped and communicated with someone, they had to document that. I knew the spirit of what they wanted, and I agree on it because remember me, 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement, testified in federal court when police officers were abusing their authority and stopped, question, and frisk. The judge in that case mentioned my testimony as the reason she ruled against the New York City Police Department versus Floyd legislation. So what I was saying is that, yes, let's make sure officers don't do that $1 million+ a year stop, question, and frisk. We're down to a trickle of that right now. It's a tool that can't be abused. They, without speaking to the police personnel the way they should have and got a full understanding, they move forward with the bill.
But some folks were saying that that information was already being collected. So there was a sense that this was not a very legitimate source of contention because the police officers were already doing that work. The idea was just to go ahead and say, hey, this is the data, we'll make it available.
It's a totally different change, brother. Right now, they were doing it when they were stopping for someone that they believe committed a crime or had suspicion that they committed a crime. They were abusing it. What they did now with this new bill, if I'm on the scene and a mother comes to me and says, my daughter is missing, and I move around and ask people, have you seen this young girl? Have you seen this young girl? Every person that I question, that you see this young girl, I got to document that now. Okay. That's far different from, I believe you committed a crime and I'm going to have to fill out a stop, question, and frisk report. And what we're saying, what we said to the city council, I want that police officer looking for that little girl. I don't want that police officer documenting every time. And it was a series of questions you had to ask. And You know New Yorkers, they don't want cops asking them a bunch of questions. I didn't do anything wrong. Why? You want me to answer a question? Did I see this little girl? Now you want to know all this other information about me? And think about the sensitivity of this city. If you are a member of the LGBTQ plus community and someone is guessing who you are and what is your gender, and you writing it down, you're just opening up more doors of conflict. Right. That's what we were saying.
Okay. So,
but go back for a moment. Solitary confinement.
Right.
We don't have solitary confinement in our city. We don't have it. But they use that terminology because it attracts people.
But isn't there a different term that is being used?
Punitive segregation.
Right. Isn't that essentially the same thing? At least that's what the advocates were talking about.
Right. Think about this. Someone slashes someone on the streets of the city of New York. What do? We arrest them and take them out of general population. Now that person is incarcerated. He slashes someone in jail. What do? We leave them in general population? Over 80% of the attacks on Rikers Island are inmates violence. Right. You have people who are inflicting violence on other people. You don't have to put them in a cell for long hours. Take them out of population so that they don't continue to inflict the violence. And then you're saying to correction officers, when you transfer the people to court, they are on buses with several other inmates. You cannot restrain them while you transfer them. Right. That's not right, and it's unfair.
Gotcha. So one of the things that people have applauded about you is the fact that
one
of the things is that you're a CUNY grad. Talk a little bit about what it means to have a mayor of New York City that actually graduated from the City University of New York.
And went to school at night, you know.
While working during the day.
2 classes at a time. I think my narrative, what I'm hoping that's not lost in the day-to-day, I'm hoping my narrative is something that just ordinary people. I'm an urban, bald-headed, earring-wearing, don't fit the characteristic of a mayor. I want people to be authentic who they are. I grew up in South Jamaica, Queens, dyslexic, bullied as being a dumb student in school. I used to pray that I didn't have to read every day because people would mimic me and laugh at me, but pushed through. Yeah. Went to school at night, CUNY, 14 years about to get my master's, never stopped. Got arrested as a child at 15 years old, beat by police officers. I'm hoping if you're sitting in Rikers Island right now, you say, wait a minute, my mayor was arrested.
And one of 2 black mayors. One of 2 black mayors.
In 110.
Right.
Out of 110, 1 of 2. Took us a 30-year gap between the 2. Okay. And all I'm doing is picking up the baton of my mentor, David Dinkins, and I'm just running the race he started, from MWBE to public safety to investing in our children. I'm picking up where he started.
All right, got you. All right, great conversation, but we have to end it there. I want to thank our special guest, New York City Mayor Eric Adams. And when we come back, we'll continue a conversation regarding the budget and talk to 2 council members who voted no on the budget. I'm Kerry Gashoro, and this is Let It Rip. While the New York City Council overwhelmingly passed a budget that many labeled as an austerity budget, 3 council members voted against the budget, arguing that it did not do enough for the working people of New York City. Now, here to help us understand why they did not vote for the budget are Council Member Shahana Hanif, representing District Council 39, and Council Member Alexa Aviles, representing District Council 38. Welcome to both of you. So you definitely watched the previous segment. I'm curious to hear, even though the mayor said that this was one of the better budgets that the city has passed, why you voted no for the budget.
So watching our mayor applaud this budget is quite problematic. And for New Yorkers, this budget is simply a restoration budget. And so my no vote was rooted in the fact that, yeah, this budget isn't enough. We are still recuperating from COVID. We are struggling to pay rent. Right. The Rent Guidelines Board just increased rent stabilized units, and so much else related to our education system. So this is a restoration budget, and I have to call it that. And I voted no because I want to do better for New York City. We need to invest.
Alexa.
Yeah. So look, I ran for council, and I'm in this role because I visioned working and delivering a people's budget, a just budget, right? That really centered working class people and the things that they need. Delivering partial meal, delivering partial services, delivering terrible services is not something that I am celebrating, and we can do better. We have the resources, and what we saw here was another political game with people's lives and making decisions. And the budget is a reflection of your moral values.
Right.
We still have major gaps, and those were decisions that were made. And so my no vote was grounded in the fact that we made some very poor decisions, and there are a lot of failures in this budget that are not recognized.
Right. So what would you say that the mayor was not being entirely accurate from his take on what the budget is?
I mean, let's just speak about the numbers here. We saw libraries cut, which meant that we didn't have Sunday services for the last 6 months. The cultural sector was eviscerated, which was also a fight that we needed to mobilize around for restoration. The promise of universal childcare, we're hundreds of millions of dollars short from reaching universal childcare access. $78 million cut for CUNY. I mean, we should be a city that is investing in our public infrastructure. I'm a former CUNY student. I graduated from Brooklyn College. And what is happening to institutions like CUNY means that working class students won't have the same kind of opportunity I had. So this budget is not a reflection of where I think the city should be headed.
Alexa, one of the points that you made was that there were certain programs that were cut. And part of the argument was that those seats are empty. But I know that had an adverse effect on your community. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, in that scenario, right, OMB had made a decision that they were just going to do these cuts, right? They call them pegs. That's the pretty word for we're cutting.
Right.
And they say they're cutting vacant seats. They're cutting unfilled positions, right? That's often the rationale that they use. But when you look and you're on the ground like we are as council members, they were cutting a program in DYCD that they said were unfilled, right? These were empty seats. And in fact, there was over 200 seats in my district of after-school programs in Red Hook. And despite our proving that they were filled, proving that there was a wait list, OMB just decided we're going to get rid of it because this is our savings. And you magnify that, teachers that were excess. And this is over the course of the mayor's tenure with the same rationale. We're redoing RFPs, we're cutting programs, all under the guise of they're empty or we don't need them, which is not
But
true.
when folks think about the city council, that ultimately the budget that gets passed is one that you guys are voting on. And there's a sense that the mayor may not understand how much power you guys actually wield. But ultimately, what was a terrible budget was still able to pass, given the number of council members that voted for it. How do you reconcile that?
Well, there's definitely, so the council as a body, right, received those powers, those budget powers in 1989 in a Charter Revision Commission, right? And it is important power, but the culture is to find a middle ground to vote yes, right? And what we are pushing, what I am pushing here is that the middle ground was still underground.
Right, because it was a restorative budget, as both of you have said.
That's correct.
And it didn't even return folks to the status quo
That's correct.
last year.
That's right. This budget basically prevented from going bad to worse. And that can't be acceptable. And I think as to your question about reconciling, I mean, I'm looking at my district, why my constituents sent me to City Hall, from cuts to universal 3K, to our public schools, to CUNY, libraries, Department of Social Services. This is impacting everyday New Yorkers.
Right.
With this budget that passed, everyday New Yorkers won't even feel the dent in what has improved.
Right. And so why are we blaming the mayor?
Because
right?
the mayor has outsized control over this budget,
But
right?
even though the council members are the ones voting for it?
So the power of the budget is not just like the whole, it is the spending power,
Right.
right? And what the council is, while the council votes on the whole, the council is able to control a teeny tiny portion, probably 10% of this $110 billion is our discretionary funding, is the initiatives that we plug holes on the mayor's portion that he decides not to fund.
But there's a time in history where the city council actually received the mayor's budget and completely did away with
100%.
it. Right, and said,
Yes.
you know what, this is not good enough. We are going to come back and present
Yes.
what we think is a better budget. Why wasn't that something that maybe folks on your end could have explored?
I mean, personally, I would have loved that. I think the council has to always lean into its power, lean into its oversight power, lean into its subpoena power when agencies are not providing what they should be providing as the oversight body. So, you know, I think it's a culture of an institution to rather compromise than lean into the full power of your ability. I would have liked to see a council budget.
Good. All right, great conversation, but we'll have to end it there. I want to thank our guests, Councilmember Shahana Hanif and Alexa Aviles. When we come back, we'll discuss the recent assassination attempt on presidential candidate Donald Trump and the current political environment that has become increasingly volatile as a result of rising political extremism and polarization. I'm Kerry Gashuro, and this is Let It Rip. For final thoughts, we wanted to discuss Donald Trump's assassination attempt by Thomas Crooks, who was reportedly a registered Republican, although media reports indicate he donated $15 to a left-leaning campaign in early 2021. Now, while President Biden urged the nation to unite and reject political violence, some Republicans were quick to blame President Biden for the attempted assassination, citing his campaign rhetoric where he said, and I quote, "I have one job, and that's to beat Donald Trump. It's time to put Trump in a bullseye." Trump, on the other hand, has made routine use of rhetorical violence where he incited people to attack the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, warned auto workers that there would be a bloodbath if he was not elected, and promised mass deportations. The use of such rhetoric has made it appear that politics is a blood sport, and violence against politicians or their family members has continued to increase. This development, combined with the rising threat of white domestic terrorism, has led many to believe that America may be headed for another civil war. Hopefully, with Trump's assassination attempt, the vitriolic political discourse will be toned down sufficiently to avoid any further violence. I'm Kerry Gashuro, and this is Let It Rip.